Welcome to Block 27 of our Celebrating the States Block of the Month. This is our version of the Idaho Beauty block. For this block, you will need 4 fabrics: a light, a medium, a dark, and an accent. From the medium fabric, cut 5 squares that measure 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. From the accent fabric, cut 4 squares that measure 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. From the background fabric, cut 12 rectangles that measure 2 inches by 3.5 inches and 4 squares that measure 2 inches by 2 inches. From the dark fabric, cut 32 squares that are 2 inches by 2 inches. Set aside the 4 background squares, 4 of the background rectangles, and the 5 medium squares. With the right sides together, place dark squares on the corners of the 4 accent squares and sew corner to corner. You can use diagonal seam tape, or you can draw lines corner to corner on the wrong side of the dark square to help you sew these lines. Next, we're going to do the same thing on the opposite corner. Next, we will use the same technique with the blue squares and the background rectangles to make flying geese units. These will measure 2 inches by 3.5 inches when finished. Before you add the second side on the background rectangles, you'll need to trim the seam to 1/4 inch and press towards the corner. Or, to conserve fabric, I like to sew a second line 1/2 inch away from the first line and closer to the corner. This will give me a small half-square triangle block to use in another project. I will use the same method on the accent square corners. This method just takes a small amount of extra time and thread, but is well worth the effort. Once you've sewn the 2 lines, all you need to do is cut in between the lines to get the 2 pieces. The pressed and trim half-square triangle block will measure about 1¼ inches by 1¼ inches. You can press all of the seams towards the dark fabric, or if you prefer, you can press the seams open to reduce bulk. Even though I don't have an immediate plan for the small half-square extra blocks, I am going to press them right away before I trim them to size and save them for a future use. One trick I've learned over the years for pressing the half square triangle units is to have the dark side facing up when I go to the ironing board. It saves time and makes it easier to grab the pieces. Now use the same technique to finish the flying geese units and make the accent squares into a square in a square unit. If this is the first state block you've seen, check the description below for a link to the playlist of all the other states in this series. There will be a total of 56 videos in this series, one for each of the states and territories, and a few extra blocks. Since this is block 27, I'm interested in knowing how many of the blocks you've completed. Let us know in the comment section below. Once we have these pieces pressed, we will have all the parts we need to start putting the block together. Lay all the pieces of the block out, start with the medium squares, and then add in the background rectangles on all 4 sides and the 4 background squares in each of the corners. Next, drop in the accent square in a square pieces, and then lastly add the flying geese units. There will be 5 rows for this block, and we'll sew each of the rows separately. The top row is the same as the bottom row, and the second row is the same as the 4th row, so we can stack these pieces and make 2 at a time. For constructing the block, the rest of the way, we will use 1/4 inch seam allowances. I usually start from the sides and work towards the center of the row, or I work across the row from left to right. It's just a matter of keeping your pieces organized. I keep sewing as long as I can without having to stop. You can press after each of the pieces added, but I usually wait until I have the rows sewn and press all the rows at the same time. At the very beginning of this project, I had decided to make 3 of these quilts, one for each of my children, much like my grandmother Mildred, who made each of her 5 children a red, white, and blue quilt in 1976 during the bicentennial. Breaking down a project this size to only 1 block a month or even 1 block a week really helps the project be manageable. Many of you have been posting pictures of your blocks on our posts of our Facebook group called The Quilted Forest Friends. We love seeing your progress and all the variety of fabrics used to make the blocks. So keep up the good work. We love the inspiration from you. Once the rows are all pieced, press towards the squares and rectangles without piecing. Lay out your block one last time and make sure all the pieces are correct before you start sewing the rows together. Just 4 seams left to sew and the Idaho Beauty block is done. Once the block is done, you can press either from the front side or the back side. Press from the center row out. I made this block with this lighter red, but I also made one with a darker red for the medium. I like to see how the block changes just by using a different fabric. We invite you to hit the like button, share the video with your quilting friends so you can all make this quilt together. Leave us a comment and be sure to subscribe so you can see all the future Celebrating the States videos. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!